Hi, my name is Sara Mazer. I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer and Enterprise Architect at Lunch Darkly, and I support our federal customers. I've been working with the federal government for over a decade. My background is in computer engineering, and I've done everything from chip design to system design to being part of a working group developing ontologies for clinical trials. And I've also been a contributor to a NIST publication. So I've had the ability to really blend my technical skills with my teamwork skills. And I've noticed how federal agencies managed and struggled through COVID times. And I thought I'd give a presentation about it today because I'm very impressed that teams under enormous pressure actually rose to the occasion and became more productive. So how did they do that? Well, first, let me set the stage. What we saw in early COVID days, especially as it relates to health and human services, was a redirection of resources and funding to critical population health programs. And federal DevOps teams who've been competing with the private sector for resources for many years were already stretched thin, and they had to step up under enormous pressure. DevOps teams quickly became more resource challenged and functioned in a keep the lights on only mode. Some team members had to rapidly shift to working at home and had those work from home challenges that many of us faced, such as having young children in the mix. Some people got sick, and some team members just started having morale issues. I'm sure that this all sounds familiar, but unlike in the private sector, DevOps teams in the federal space found themselves with additional challenges and more work. And for example, federal buildings and parks were closing, and there was a need to notify the public and continually keep them up to date. That created a need for real-time changes to websites and algorithms that are used to determine whether people can purchase permits online, are eligible for certain programs, and required a lot of extra work. And what do these high-level business issues really have to do with DevOps processes and feature management? Well, let me first start by explaining what feature management is. At a high level, feature management is simply the ability to separate deployments from releases. And that enables significant benefits to federal agencies. Smaller incremental changes actually means that you can develop faster with less risk. Before I proceed with this presentation, let me go over a few terms. A feature management platform uses feature flags. Feature flags are just decision points in code whose behavior can change during runtime. And they're typically implemented by wrapping a feature inside a normal if statement or a case statement. And then based on the metadata you provide, the feature will either be shown or not shown. So the metadata is what we use to target individuals or teams or larger segments of the population. To connect your features in your application with the SaaS feature management dashboard, you use an SDK of your choice. And as I'm defining terms, let me mention one more, DORA, which stands for the DevOps Research and Assessment Program. They've been studying DevOps for 7 years and interviewed over 32,000 individuals. Their latest 2021 report was recently published, and I'll reference that quite a few times in this presentation. Feature management fundamentally transforms software delivery because it supports modern DevOps processes like CI/CD and progressive delivery. Feature management democratizes the ability to turn a feature on or off for any segment of users across any app. All teams are empowered to understand the value of their new features faster. And teams can schedule and even automate multi-step release workflows. That promotes a fast, safe and consistent feature rollouts at scale. And development is accelerated with less risk. Let me give you an example of what that means. Imagine your dev team worked really hard on a fancier website than this. It was a really critical release that implemented a lot of federally mandated changes to policies due to COVID. And let's say there were 10 really important features and a few bug fixes thrown in. And those changes are probably going to cause a lot of confusion in the public. So you expect to have a lot of people requesting help using a chatbot and other means. So you add a few improvements to the chatbot in this release as well. And your team tested it well in staging, and everybody was so confident in this release, you even released on a Friday afternoon. But as you were getting ready to enjoy your weekend, someone slacks you and says, I think there's a problem. That one new CSR chatbot improvement isn't syncing with the CSR case management queue anymore. The public is stuck in limbo waiting for someone that just never shows up. So if you're a federal agency or not, this could have major real-world implications. Could this make the news? Could ill people not get the help they need in a timely fashion? Could that whistleblower or intelligence tip not come in? And prior to feature management, most orgs would perform a rollback to an earlier working release. But then you would also lose those 10 other new features, those bug fixes, until that issue is resolved. However, with feature management, each feature is isolated so that you could go to a dashboard and just toggle off that one broken feature. You just bring up the dashboard, search for the feature, and toggle it off. All of your other features and bug fixes remain. Now that's a simple kill switch example, but it shows you the power of being able to immediately reduce risk to an agency. And if this happened in the middle of the night, you can just turn it off. I can't emphasize enough the importance of taking that anxiety and stress off developers when they're forced to deal with middle of the night pages, trying to fix something while sleep deprived and ending up breaking more things while trying to fix an issue. How many of you have seen things actually get worse after trying to fix that one little thing that was broken? I'm not here to advocate moving slower, but rather have you think about what is needed to move quickly in a safer way. You need to provide more value faster, but you need to do this without sacrificing the quality of your employees or your health. The missing piece in this is making sure that you have the systems and processes in place to support this way of working, such as using feature management. There's also operational use cases for feature management that really come in handy. Imagine you're very stressed out and you have an incident and you don't know how to fix it. What you might do is go to the logs, but unfortunately, you don't have enough information. The application's been running as is, and it has a very minimal logging level. What you might do is redeploy the application and change the logging levels so you have additional information in the log files that will help you debug the situation. If you're using feature management, though, you can actually change the logging level on the fly in real time. So let me give you an example. Here's a website that I'm running. So it's an application, and on the left-hand side of my screen, you see a feature of set logging level that has been configured. Underneath, I just have a sample output of the application. Now I'm going to go and refresh my application so that you do see that the logs are updated to the terminal. And then when there's an incident, I would go up and set the logging level to something different, say debug, save it, and then let me refresh the application. Down below, you do see that there's been additional debug information that's sent out. Not only do you improve your team's morale and reduce stress, in DORA terms, your teams are becoming more productive. And usually your release frequency and time from commit to deploy is faster. So let's take a look at one case study in more detail. We'll talk about the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS. One of my current roles is to support development teams at CMS to ensure that the Office of Communications programs are running without issue. These are many of the public-facing websites, including healthcare.gov and medicare.gov. There are many separate development teams with different system integrators that own pages under those domains or components within the pages. All of those teams have a variety of DevOps processes, tools, deployment schedules, and so forth. But typically, CMS schedules development around major initiatives, such as the release of the new Medicare plans each year, or around healthcare.gov's open enrollment. Now, with COVID, each team was impacted in a variety of ways, much like we all were. Unfortunately, for the public sector, you can't just delay a release of a product. You're mandated by law to go live on certain dates. Then, due to COVID, changes to eligibility occurred. So first, due to executive order, open enrollment 2020 was extended. It's actually just extended this year as well, I found out recently. Additionally, later in 2021, open enrollment was reopened for a period of time called SEP, or Special Enrollment Period. And what that meant for development teams that were already having to do the same amount of work with less people, now they actually had to do more work with less resources. To change eligibility dates for the public isn't as simple as just keeping a website on longer, obviously. There are modifications to what you can see when you log in, many calculations happening under the hood around eligibility that needed to be updated, complex determinations of what to show individuals and when. Essentially, CMS needed to quickly turn new executive policy into code again and again because of all of these COVID-related changes to policies and dates changing. And during major events, such as open enrollment, code to the website is typically frozen. Any new changes go through significant scrutiny and are only performed when absolutely necessary. So we're at teams do the same amount of work with less resources, teams do more work with less resources, and now we have a third issue, less time. Because eligibility periods are extended, the times that developers have to make changes or upgrade the infrastructure is reduced. In fact, there was only a few months between last year's open enrollment and the SEP period, and then this year's open enrollment. And that makes it incredibly difficult to get everything that they wanted to get done finished in time. And now with open enrollment 2021 being extended, that may impact another project I'm working on, which is to transition CMS from using a private instance to a FedRAMP instance of feature management. And we can't do that switchover and testing until open enrollment is complete. And so how did the development teams at CMS manage to do more with less resources in a shorter amount of time? They used feature management. Almost every team within the Office of Communication uses feature management to extend the eligibility dates for their particular project. For each component that has required a change to a date or an eligibility calculation or extension, that feature is wrapped in some code. Here's what that might look like. A federal DevOps team would use an SDK of their language of choice. In this case, I'll use Python. Inside the code, they first specify the environment they want to control. They can and do test in production. So yeah, let's say this is a prod key here. When you have the ability to literally test in production, yet not release features to the public, you can find more bugs that simulated environments wouldn't catch. It even saves them money because they don't need all the dev, test, QA staging, pre-prod environments anymore. And for the sake of explaining feature management to the masses today, I'm showing a server-side example, which is why I'm using Python. With server-side use cases, when you initialize, your application gets everything we know about the current state of your environment from the previous dashboard we saw. The names of features, their evaluation rules, and their current states. Now, not every feature management company treats client-side and server-side connections differently. Since my company works with the government agencies, we feel that it's mandatory to not trust a client. So for client-side applications, we authenticate as a single user and only send back the feature evaluations for that user and not the entire rule sets. Otherwise, you're bound to have some hackers digging into rules, user segments, and even trying to modify codes to see something that they shouldn't. Now, after initialization, the SDK establishes a server-sent, long-lived HTTP connection to receive any additional changes that somebody would make in the dashboard for real-time updating of your application. The next line of code we'll look at is the variation call, where three things are provided: the feature name, the request context, and a fallback value. This fallback value is only used when you can't even initialize. Otherwise, the last known value of the feature is provided until a connection is reestablished. In our case, the request context is a user, but it could be a server, a cluster name, anything you want. I'm keeping this simple with a Boolean true or false. Based on what we know about this person, how it evaluates, we are either going to show or not show this feature. Now, what do we know about people? So every application is different. If you were a commercial company, you might make use of some of the demographic information or even PII, but that's pretty rare with a federal agency to want to store that in a SaaS application. However, that doesn't mean your application can't take advantage of all of this metadata. There's a concept of a private attribute. Because your targeting rules have already been loaded in your application's memory, it can perform the evaluation locally using all of this data, just not have it saved in our SaaS environment. And so you prevent sharing PII externally by declaring your metadata as private attributes. And that gets us past a lot of organization security teams. Now, agencies could selectively target people by location, age, gender, and so forth to have very targeting public messaging. However, in most cases, we're working with anonymous users. Ideally, the feature management solution or some other integrated solution generates some random unique identifier, so we can at least support things like canary rollouts if we can't target people by anything else. That way, we can still slowly ramp up who sees new features while making sure the underlying infrastructure can support any additional load to the system our new feature might cause. But back to testing and production. We want our QA team to see features before the public so we can add their names, make a QA segment, or target anyone with an agency email address. So when CMS rolled out the new 2021 Medicare plans to the public during COVID times, they went to the dashboard and flipped the flag by flag, enabling all the new plans, and the entire rollout lasted 7 minutes. It was flawless because they had already been testing in production. In a similar manner, flags are flipped to enable open enrollment eligibility algorithms, extend open enrollment, or enable those special enrollment periods. They could have even saved those 7 minutes by scheduling features to go live automatically. But I know the team wanted to flip flags live and test during the rollout as a team. Let's take a look at another case study, recreation.gov, or for short, I'll call it rec.gov. For the public, rec.gov is a one-stop source for travel ideas, trip planning, camping tour, permit reservations, and park passes on our nation's federal lands. For the government, rec.gov is a tool that can provide management solutions for public recreation locations. And the beautiful rec.gov website supports 3.9 million reservations, 4.2 million transactions, and over 200,000 mobile app downloads, and has 20 million annual users. The rec.gov website is managed by Booz Allen Hamilton, who works with the 12 federal agencies affiliated with the website. And Booz Allen started with an internal feature management solution, and the team was already releasing frequently at a velocity of over 10 times a day. But their deployments were coupled with releases, inflexible, and more cumbersome than necessary. Big events, such as the opening of registrations for popular parks like Yosemite and Zion, proved particularly challenging. Updates could not be made quickly enough. And as the most popular campsites book in just minutes, the team really needed real-time control of their features. In addition to adopting a number of modern technologies supporting e-commerce, DevSecOps best practices, and a microservices model to support the reinvented experience of rec.gov, Booz Allen determined that moving to a SaaS feature management platform would really enable the necessary real-time control of the code base and provide a new level of release confidence. If you happen to visit rec.gov during COVID, you would have seen large COVID banners across the page with public updates, or you may have seen your favorite campsites close and then open. Feature flags provided the ability to react to changes in COVID messaging and algorithms, which support or prevent transactions on the website. The progression of COVID-19 made reacting in real time and having total control over releases more important than ever before. Booz Allen worked closely with the business teams to make it easy for each team to independently create and publish announcements without any help from the developers. Business owners could just go right to the dashboard and toggle messages on or off themselves. Even aside from COVID, the nature of inventory on rec.gov makes it so that there are really large releases once or twice a month, sometimes even once or twice a year. And feature flags are really the only way the team can protect themselves and ensure positive customer experiences. Booz Allen uses trunk-based development to build rec.gov, feature flagging the majority of their features. And that helps keep each service's trunk branches as clean and tidy as possible. Having a single repo waiting for sign-offs on all the different COVID messaging across all the inventories would have frozen development for weeks. With feature management, even the newest features can now be tested in production, validated as needed, and quickly rolled out across the platform. So developers don't have to deal with the friction of long branches and complicated merges. They're closer to CI/CD and trunk-based development. In all key aspects of DORA metrics, they are more productive. Program managers can enable new features when they are ready to go live without waiting for other stalled features that would delay their schedule. And non-technical people can make changes themselves without taking time away from the developers. Agencies reduce risk with kill switches, which enable teams to react quickly to incidents without impacting other critical features. Kill switches give developers time to fix things correctly without possibly doing more damage when sleep deprived. Using feature management, agencies can be more nimble in times of COVID, doing more with less resources. If you want to learn more about how these two development teams use feature management, I invite you to listen to the webinar I moderated with developers from these two federal teams so you can hear from them directly. Here is the link, but it's just as easy to search for Launch Darkly DevSecOps webinar. And I've also included a link to DORA, which contains a downloadable version of the latest 2021 study. So The 5 takeaways I will leave you with are: separating deployments from releases eases the burden on developers. Feature management is critical for agencies that need to move quickly to enable new policies. Kill switches reduce risk to a government agency. Testing and production is a good thing, so go ahead and release on a Friday. Thank you.